Well, the casuals said it was going to be a dull week, and what are casuals? They're wrong. It was a great weekend of college football. Don't be a casual. Watch every weekend like your life depends on it. Welcome to Inside the Illini Weekly with Ben Machi. I am Ben Machi. We've got a lot to get to here in this show. Week 2, Illinois, huge win on the road at Duke. We're going to recap that game. We're going to preview this weekend against Western Michigan. We got to get around the country too. USF goes into the swamp and takes down Florida, and then Missouri, they win the border war. We're also going to look ahead to the Week 3 slate, and of course, we're going to take some game picks, and we're going to recap how we did last week as well. Let's get right into it. A great performance from Illinois, especially in the second half. It was a tough start to the game in a lot of different areas. Duke went right down the field there in the first drive of the game. They ended up having to settle for a field goal. A bit of an ugly win, I'll call it, even though they won 45-19. I will call it a little ugly. The offensive line really struggled, especially in the first half. They could not run the ball at all, and I think that pressure also got to Luke Altmyer. It made him a little bit inaccurate, but hey, they still were in the lead at halftime, and then, of course, Duke just imploded there in the second half, especially, end of the first half, roughing call against Illinois. They would have been off the field. Duke, they ended up getting a touchdown off of that play call, or off that penalty, rather. So a bit of a messy game for Illinois. You can see the chart here. Illinois, their offense versus Duke's offense. Duke's offense played well. It was just they kept moving the ball right down the field, kept getting into the red zone, and kept turning it over. That was the story for Duke, and that was the story for Illinois, and they had a big part to play in that. I should say that. I mean, the defense played well when they had to. It was very bend, don't break from the Illinois defense, but when you get 5 turnovers, it's going to be a big reason why you win a game, and that was a big reason why Illinois was able to win the game. Let's talk about the turnovers. Duke, they really just self-imploded, self-destructed, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, they would move the ball, get into the red zone. It felt like 4 or 5 times they were ready to score, ready to strike, ready to take over the game at some points, and they just couldn't do it. It was Gabe Akis that got to Darian Mensah and was able to strip the ball from him, or Tanner Heckel made an outstanding catch for an interception there late in the second half. I think it was the end of the third quarter, or it might have been the fourth quarter, but an outstanding play, even when the game was still technically in reach for Duke. You can see Darian Mensah's numbers there. He played well outside of the turnovers, and when you're the quarterback, you can't turn the ball over 3 times. He had 2 fumbles, a pick, but he did play well. I told you last week, don't be surprised if he ends up with over 300 passing yards, and he did just that. But like I said, Duke just could not find a way to get into the end zone consistently. 5 turnovers is way too many. For Illinois specifically, the offensive line, this was concerning. The first half was very concerning for the offensive line. They could not run the ball whatsoever. I say it right there. It was offensive. It was an offensive offensive line. Look at that pressure rate. 40% of Luke Altmyer's dropbacks, he was pressured. He was only sacked 4 times, but you can't give up that many pressures and expect your offense to be able to score points and move the ball at all. You also can see the rushing yards in the first half. -5 rushing yards in the first half. You're not going to win a lot of games like that. And, I was just sitting there on Saturday thinking, man, it seems like they're going backwards a lot. Like, they can't get anything going. And I went through and I counted. I myself added up the yards in the first half running the ball. -5. Not good enough. 2.9 rushes per attempt. That's not going to win you a lot of games, especially when you get into Big Ten play. 10 negative plays, you just can't have it. And then they also tacked on 4 penalties. The offensive line was really bad, especially in the first half. And the reason that that's such a concern is that they brought all these guys back They were really excited about that unit. They were getting Joe Moore Award buzz in the preseason. That's the award given to the best offensive line in the country. And they turned in this performance against the first real opponent that they've seen so far this year. Luckily there in the second half, they did bounce back, and they did play a lot better. The running game got going. Luke Altmaier had a little more time to try to throw the ball, and he did it much more effectively and efficiently there in the second half. But yeah, a little concerned. I did like that they were able to bounce back, and they really put their foot on the throat of Duke there in the fourth quarter when the game was already almost out of reach. But I did like how they bounced back. But you don't want to see that again, especially in a couple of weeks when you're heading on the road to a ranked Indiana. Now, the good thing for this game and the first two games really is that I think we have Hank Beatty as the number one receiver. I think that conversation is over. He has just been so consistent in the first 2 weeks. He is so obviously Luke Altmaier's safety valve, and that goes such a long way, especially against Duke in that game when Luke Altmaier had no time. He's just looking to dump it off to Hank Beatty. This guy's so good at recognizing and sitting down in a zone, just finding that 2 yards of space in between a couple of defenders. You can see these stats here just through the first couple of games. He's been electric. Averaging 115-plus yards. Hasn't caught a touchdown yet, but I'm sure that's going to change. He has a rushing touchdown that he scored against Duke, and then he had that punt return for a touchdown as well. And the rest of the wide receivers have shown up as well. Still a lot of questions about the rest of the group, but I'm done questioning Hank Beatty. I think he's a clear number one. Is he a good enough number one to win a lot of games in the Big Ten and be able to throw consistently and effectively in the Big Ten? We're going to find out. But so far, I like what I've seen. I don't have any reason to doubt him against Western Michigan this week either. I think he'll have another good game. And Barry Lunny Jr. and Brett Bielema, they spoke yesterday at the press conference that they have every Monday. Hank Beatty just kept coming up, and they spoke to how important he's been so far for this offense.
I think it's just his time, and he's kind of quietly and just waited, been patient, and just gotten better at his craft, and he's got a lot of our quarterbacks have a lot of confidence in him, and we're just kind of attacking the slot stuff, and he's doing a great job.
I automatically thought, is this a defensive guy? And to be honest, really coming into fall camp that year, I didn't know exactly where it was going to play out. I did think about defense, but after I saw him catch the ball, he just catches the ball so naturally. And even like that, his run on Saturday, that was kind of up his bag of tricks, because once he's coming at you and you got a couple choices to make, east or west, and to go vertical, I kind of felt good about that, right? He just kind of gave a little bit of, got high with the shoulders, sunk, and then made a move. So he's just really gifted with the ball in his hands, and super excited to see it play out.
They've been looking for the alpha, the wide receiver one, and I think they've found it in Hank Beatty. All right, if this is your first time joining us, this is only the second episode that we've done. This is a little rundown of who I am. I went to West Virginia, graduated from there, grew up a Penn State fan, can't give it up, but I've been covering Illinois for the last 3 years that I've been here. I grew up and was raised in Orlando, Florida, so right in the middle of SEC and ACC country. And then if you've never seen me before, you need to turn on the news at 4 o'clock on WAND, because myself and Karen will keep you informed, and we'll also have a good time as we bring you through that full hour until 5 o'clock. So make sure you tune in then. And every Tuesday here on the WAND Now app, we've got this show. We're talking all things college football. Okay, let's get to the biggest games of the week. Michigan and Oklahoma. This was a dogfight for a lot of it. Oklahoma wins it 24-13. They were really impressive to me, certainly defensively, but John Notre at quarterback is really good. And I told you last week that I thought he had an outside shot to win the Heisman, and I think he proved why against a really good Michigan defense. They couldn't run the ball at all. So John Notre said, okay, I'll do it myself. You can see 74 rushing yards. and two touchdowns on the ground. He was really impressive. Whenever they needed a couple of yards, it was him toting the rock, and then he also was able to find his guys on the outside and play a really, really efficient game. He had a great connection with Deion Burks. That's his wide receiver over at Oklahoma. Burks had 7 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. If that connection stays like that, they're really, I think, going to be a player in the SEC. For Michigan, it was a little the opposite side of the coin. Bryce Underwood's a really young player. He's a true freshman. He has no experience playing college football, and this was a huge game, his second started game ever in his collegiate career on the road at Oklahoma. His stats aren't going to impress you, and they shouldn't. They're not very good. But I did think he was a little bit better than his stat profile will show you or explain if you didn't watch the game. He has no one to throw to. The wide receivers, you think Illinois has questions at wide receiver. Michigan, it's a really shallow pool in that wide receiver room for Michigan. I think they're going to have to be a big player in the wide receiver transfer portal here at the end of this year, but you can't do anything about it this year. You have the guys that you have. He just has nobody to throw to, and he wasn't allowed to really try to air it out. The play calling to me was a little scared. They don't want to ruin his confidence. I get it, but you got to let the guy sling it. You went and flipped him from LSU and paid him all this money to come to Michigan. You got to let the guy sling it. I do think that Bryce Underwood, the one thing that I see that I don't love is that he doesn't really know when to throw a bullet pass or when to put a little bit of touch on a pass. And I think he'll learn that as he continues on. But he didn't play great, but I don't think his stats really show just how good he played, because he had a few drops, a couple of times where he could have put a little touch on it. He threw a bullet pass. He'll get better at that as we go on. All right, next game, Arizona State at Mississippi State. This game perfectly encapsulates why college football is the best. You want to try to tell a Mississippi State fan that the playoff is the only thing that matters? Because that's what a lot of people that want to keep expanding this playoff try to say. The playoff, you're only playing for a national title. Who cares what else happens if you can't compete for a national title? No, Mississippi State fans cared, and they cared about this game, and they punched Arizona State in the mouth. Arizona State could not throw the ball. They couldn't throw the ball against Mississippi State. Let's get to Blake Shapen, though, first. Blake Shapen, when he's healthy, is a really fun player. I mean, he was really fun to watch. Now, Mississippi State, they're going to air it out a lot. They don't run the ball a ton. That's just the system that they use. And Shapen was outstanding. He controlled the game from the pocket. He was able to find a bunch of different guys. And, of course, Arizona State storms back and takes the lead late in the fourth quarter. And he was calm and cool. And he threw a 58-yard touchdown pass with 30 seconds left to take the lead. It was just an awesome game from Blake Shapen and from Mississippi State. Happy for that fan base, because I don't think they're going to be bottom feeders in the SEC for a third straight year. I don't know how good they are. It's still early in the year, but it's an exciting win for Mississippi State to knock off a ranked Big 12 team. And of course, all the SEC people are going to say, hey, this is why the SEC is so much better. I don't know about that, but it's an exciting win for Mississippi State. For Arizona State, as I mentioned, they could not throw the ball at all. They could run it a little bit. You can see their two-headed monster backfield with Raleek Brown and Kanye Udo. They ran the ball really well, but they got into a deep hole, and I honestly respect that even in the second half, they're down 17 points, and they say, no, we're not throwing to get back in this. We're not going to press. We're just going to ride our guys. We're going to run the football and try to get back into it. And they did. They took the lead there late in the fourth quarter. You need more from Sam Leavitt, who's Arizona State's quarterback. Some people think that he's going to be a first-round pick, or could be a first-round pick into the NFL. 10 of 22, 82 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. That's not going to be good enough. They know that. Kenny Dillingham knows that. And it was a surprise to see him struggle that much, but it really is a credit to Mississippi State's defense and how much they've improved year over year as well. And Arizona State, they could still figure it out and go and win the Big 12 because who knows what's going to happen there in the Big 12. All right, USF and Florida. This is the big one. USF, they just go into the swamp and they flat out beat Florida. They just beat them. 18-16 the final score. It was a close game, obviously. A 2-point win. USF won on a walk-off field goal. But it was almost like Florida and Florida fans in the stadium were like, wow, USF, they have the audacity to compete in this game. They have the audacity to try to compete with us. And they did the entire game. And they have 2 ranked wins in 2 weeks. They have the best resume in the country so far. We'll get to where they're ranked here shortly. But they also had the better quarterback in this game. I mean, Byron Brown was really good for the Bulls here in this game. He played really well. He was able to use his feet when he had to, and he led the drive down the field at the end of the game that they needed to kick a chip shot walk-off field goal. DJ Lagway for Florida, again, this is another guy. We talked about Arch Manning's struggle last week. DJ Lagway was a guy that people thought could win the Heisman this year, and he's been flat out not good through the first 2 weeks. And, you know, he hasn't played an SEC team yet. I mean, USF's a really good team, but it's not like the competition is what he's going to see the rest of the year. I wonder if he's healthy because he's always banged up, it seems like, and he was banged up in fall camp this year as well. He's played the first game, he played the second game, but he doesn't look right. And you know, that does worry me a little bit about DJ Lagway because can he stay healthy? Because when he is healthy, he's a really good player, and he's just not playing very well right now. Just overall, though, for Florida, Billy Napier is a dead man walking, it seems. He kind of got taken off death row last year once DJ Lagway came in and played well. But a home loss to USF. The pitchforks were already out a little bit for him. Now they're waving in the air. They're waving him in the air. They're done with Billy Napier. They're ready to be done. The fan base, I should say, they're completely done. And I can't say I blame them. Now I'm not going to go ahead and call for his job because I think things can still change throughout this season. But I understand why Florida fans are frustrated, and you know you can't lose at home to USF, especially when you're ranked and you actually have some expectations. You've got a quarterback that everybody thinks is really good. So I fear for Billy Napier, especially if this weekend at LSU doesn't go well. I think it could get bad real quickly in Gainesville. The question for USF is, why are they not in the top 10? We're going to get to Miami here shortly. They have the best resume in the country. Put them in the top 10. Look at that schedule. Ranked Boise State. Destroy them at home. Head on the road at Florida. They beat them. Now they're at number 5 Miami. Man, if they win this game, they should be in the top 5. I think they should be in the top 10 right now. And then look at the rest of that schedule. Who jumps out to you there? Nobody to me. Navy might be all right. Memphis could be okay. But, I mean, I'm looking at 11-1 or 12-0 if they win this weekend. And, you know, that means they're obviously a shoo-in to be in the college football playoff as the group of 5 nominee. All right, let's get to that Miami game now. Look, USF's coming off a huge win. Miami, they beat Notre Dame in week 1, played a cupcake last week, so they already have a great win as well. It's an interesting matchup, especially for USF. They jump all the way to number 18, could be higher. Miami's a lot better than Florida is. I think that's clear just based off of what Florida did last weekend, but maybe USF walks into Miami and makes the Hurricanes look silly just like they made Florida look silly. I could see it happening. Now the number is 17.5, so not many people really believe that, and I'm not sure I really believe that either. But Miami's a lot better. Their defensive line is outstanding. We've talked about Bain. We've talked about Akeem Mesidor. And their secondary, that was the problem that they had last year. It looks really improved from a year ago, and that was the worry heading into this year. I'm just not sure that USF can move the ball. And, they didn't really move the ball that well against Florida. I think it might be a little worse against Miami because Miami's defense, their defense is really good. And Carson Beck on the other side, playing quarterback, I think he looks really good and really comfortable and really in control coming in as a transfer from Georgia in the offseason. I think for USF to win this game, they're going to need another gross, low-scoring, just heads mashing together type of game. I don't know if they're going to get that. Alex Golish is a really good coach. He should probably be at the top of the board for any job that comes open at the end of this year, maybe even Florida. He's a really good coach. We'll see what they come up with. Let's get to the actual pick. I think Miami's going to win this game. I'm not really – now, I'm concerned about USF because of what they just did to Florida on the road. I think Miami will win. I just think they're too good defensively, and I really like what I've seen from Carson Beck and those receivers that also had some question marks heading into this year. I do think 17.5 is a little much. So give me USF to cover the points. But I think it'll be a good game. But I just think I think Miami will maybe pull away there in the fourth quarter. But 17 in the hook, I'll take that with USF in the points. All right, big one in South Bend here this weekend. Texas A&M at Notre Dame, 6:30 kickoff right here on NBC and WAND. Boy, this is an exciting game. Notre Dame went in there and beat Texas A&M down in College Station a year ago. Can Texas A&M do the same thing to Notre Dame this year? I don't know, but one thing I do know for Notre Dame, they have to feed Jeremiah Love. They have to give him the ball. They gave him the ball 10 times versus Miami. He had 33 yards. That's not enough. It's not good enough. He is such a good player. He's so good. He's a really good player. A lot of people think that he's the best running back in the country, and I don't have a ton of argument about that. 10 for 33 is not enough. You got to feed it to him. You just got to keep giving him the rock. If he starts slow, he starts slow. You keep giving it to him because I'm not sure C.J. Carr alone can beat Texas A&M. They've got a pretty good defense as well. Mike Elko knows what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. You got to give Jeremiah Love the ball. It's easy to say, but they didn't against Miami. They were off last week, so we don't really have another data point to see what they'll do with him. But it has to be more than 10 rushes. I would prefer it to be into the 20s for Jeremiah Love. I think it's going to be a physical game, similar to last year, grinded out type of game for both teams. For Texas A&M, the question is always at quarterback with Marcel Reed. He's a good player. He's a fun player to watch. He can throw the ball, and he can really run it. Can he make Notre Dame miss with his legs? Can he take off and scramble for big gains multiple times in this game? Because he's going to have to use his legs if Texas A&M is going to win this game, and he's going to have to throw the ball effectively as well. I think he can, but the question remains, can Marcel Reed make enough throws? He doesn't have a lot of experience under his belt playing in college. He's only a sophomore, and he only played the last handful of games last season. So can he do it? Can he make enough plays to keep Texas A&M in this game and maybe even win it? Because if they do, then they might be off to the races towards maybe an SEC title game berth or a playoff berth. This could be a real linchpin for both. If Notre Dame loses, they're 0-2 with a schedule that a lot of people said, man, at worst they'll go 11-1 and make the playoff and be a national title contender. Could they be 0-2 before September is even over? They might be. Let's get the prediction, though. I don't think Notre Dame's going to lose. I don't think they're going to go 0-2. They've had an off week to get ready for this game. Texas A&M played on Saturday. They looked okay. They were playing an FCS opponent as well. They were fine. I think Notre Dame's going to win this game. I don't have a strong lean one way or another, so I'll lay the points with Notre Dame. This is gonna be a gritty, grinded out type of game, like 14-10, I think, type of game. I'd be surprised if either team really lights it up because both defenses are pretty good. All right, last one before we get to Western Michigan and Illinois. Georgia and Tennessee in Knoxville, 2:30 kickoff, game of the week, one of the games of the week. Can Tennessee get over the Georgia hump? It's a tough ask for Tennessee. They don't have the quarterback that they spent a lot of money to bring in a couple of years ago, but they have this guy, Joey Aguilar. And he's been a lot better than certainly I expected, and I think better than a lot of people expected. They essentially traded Nico Iamaleava with Joey Aguilar to UCLA, and he's been really good. They had a tougher opening game in a neutral site against Syracuse, and he looked great. Joey Aguilar looked really good. The thing that I want to point out is the interception total right here. 0 interceptions. He had close to the most amount of interceptions a year ago at Appalachian State before he transferred to UCLA and then to Tennessee. Yeah, these guys are all over the place, guys. But he threw a lot of picks last year. And to have 0 interceptions thrown against, one pretty competitive team in Syracuse and then an FCS opponent, I think it's a really good sign for Joey Aguilar and for Tennessee. And Josh Heupel just knows quarterbacks. He always has a good quarterback, and he always has a good running game too, and they have that so far this year as well. For Georgia, they looked bad last week against Austin Peay. It's Austin Peay. Maybe they couldn't get up for it, fine. But the question this year is, can they run the ball? They didn't run the ball that well last year, and a lot of that was because the offensive line wasn't great, and maybe they didn't have that lead tailback that they really want. Can they run the ball? Is the offensive line improved enough for them this year? I mean, you can see through 2 games, they're running it pretty well. 5 yards a pop, you'll take that. Absolutely. 7 touchdowns, pretty good to start the year. They just looked a little sluggish against Austin Peay, and Georgia does that from time to time. Also, Josh McCray, he transferred from Illinois, the running back, to Georgia. You want to know what his stats are so far this year? 3 rushes for 5 yards. So that shows you that the grass is not always greener there in the transfer portal. All right, for the prediction, I think Georgia's going to win this game. I just don't think Tennessee has quite enough. I wasn't a believer in Tennessee preseason. I'm more of a believer now, but boy, it's a tough ask to pick against Georgia. Georgia's a 4.5-point favorite. If I'm going to pick Georgia to win, I'll pick them to cover. Again, no real strong lean for the line, but I do think Georgia's going to win. I just think they have a little too much. I just trust them a little bit more than I do Joey Aguilar and Tennessee, and maybe they'll prove me wrong because I thought Syracuse would be a tight game against Tennessee, and they weren't. All right, last week's record, if you want us to keep track, we are keeping track. Straight up, on my picks, I was 3-0. Against the spread, 1-2. Iowa State won by 3. We took a -3.5. The hook kind of killed us there, but a decent start to the year. All right, the big game, Western Michigan against Illinois, coming in to Memorial Stadium to try to knock off the number 9 team in the country now. Number 9 in the country, Illinois. When's the last time you heard that? It's been a long time. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This should be a beatdown for Illinois. They should dominate on Saturday night against Western Michigan. I think the Broncos are a pretty bad MAC team. I don't think they're very good at all, even in that conference, which isn't a great conference. They're 0-2. They lost to Michigan State. They actually held their own a little bit, at least in the first half, but then they lost last week to North Texas. So I just don't think they're that good of a MAC team, and I think that Illinois should be able to take care of business here pretty easily. Now, I was watching Western Michigan's coach Lance Taylor this afternoon, and he had this to say about what his plan is going to be heading on the road at Illinois.
Ultimately, when you go into a game like this, to be honest with you, we have to do what we do well. We're not Duke. We have to be Western Michigan, and I think we're starting to become the Western Michigan team that we wanted to become. We ran the football really well this week. Our defense is creating those havoc and turnover plays. We just have to continue to fine-tune the details of what we're working on and our schemes. And when you go into a game like this, a non-conference game against a really good opponent, you can't try to get cute. You can't try to do too much or do something that you're not good at. You really have to hang your hat on what you do well and try to do it at a high level.
What they do well, I think, is play decent defense, but offensively they are kind of a mess. Now, they did score against North Texas last week, but they've got two quarterbacks playing in both games. You can see them right there, Brock Lowry and Brady Jones. Neither of them have lit the world on fire. Now, Coach Taylor there in that press conference did hint at maybe picking one or the other to play against Illinois. It's been a battle all throughout the summer for these two, and neither of them have really separated, as you can see right there. Just neither of them have been very good. If I had to guess, if they're going to go with one, they'll go with Brock Lowry. But that's just a guess. I'm not a Western Michigan expert. They have not made that decision yet. But, Aaron Henry did say that, two quarterbacks can be a problem because you just don't know what they're going to be. Now, Western Michigan's also going to try to run the football. When you have bad quarterback play, that leads to you trying to pound the rock. And they don't do that very well either. Again, they were better against North Texas than they were against Michigan State. That's to be expected. But now they're going back to a team in the same relative caliber as Michigan State. Illinois is obviously much better than Michigan State this year. But, a Big Ten team. All their ranks are near the bottom of the FBS here for the running game. They're just not getting a great push from their offensive line, and they're struggling to get anything going in the passing game, so they're trying to rely more on the rushing, and it's just not going well. Like I said, they were much better last week against North Texas. Okay, prediction. Illinois is going to win this game. I think I made that pretty clear when I said that this is going to be a beatdown, or it should be at least. The line's 27.5. I don't really care that it's 4 touchdowns. I think Illinois should cover this game. I think it's going to be a 49-3 type game for Illinois. At least it should be if they come out the way, obviously the coaching staff and I'm sure all the players want to come out of the gate. Brett Bielema, a couple of notes. Brett Bielema did say that Dylan Roziek, who left the game, I think it was late in the first half against Duke last week, he said that he could be back for this week, but if not, will be back for Indiana in a couple of weeks. We'll see what decision they make. I'm not sure why they would stretch it to try to get him to play against Western Michigan, especially when I'm sure they know that they should have it somewhat handled. The offense should have its way. I think Luke Altmaier will be great again. I'd like to see more consistency from the offensive line and the running backs here this weekend against Western Michigan because you got to have it all together when you go on the road to Bloomington. All right, let's see their schedule here because I want to point something out. We talked last week, you can't lose to Duke. You can't lose to Duke because then a lot of other games get a lot scarier. Let's call it a win against Western Michigan. Let's even tentatively call it a win against Purdue there in a few weeks. Indiana, at Indiana, USC, home for Ohio State. If they win 2 out of 3 of those and they beat Western Michigan and Purdue, I think they're headed to the playoff because the last 4 games really don't scare you very much. Washington, I think, is a good team, but the last 4, they don't scare me too much. At Wisconsin, maybe could get a little dicey, but I think you're looking at a playoff team if they win 2 of 3 against Indiana, USC, and Ohio State. If they win 3 of 3, if they win all 3 of those games, you might have to start buying your tickets to Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship. So it's an exciting time to be an Illinois fan. They've got Western Michigan here this weekend before they go on the road for the first time in Big Ten play against Indiana. Thanks so much for watching. Again, we're going to do this every single Tuesday inside the Illini Weekly with Ben Machi on the WAND Now app. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your friends. Watch it. We're going to try to have a good time as the season goes on. Enjoy Saturday. We only got so many of them left. See ya.